Sometimes the people we spend years searching for are standing right in front of us when we least expect it. Ryan Walker had built a life most people could only dream about. At 39 years old, he was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing real estate companies in the country, a man whose name appeared in business magazines and financial headlines almost every week. His days were packed with board meetings, investor calls, and flights between cities. Yet on that cool October afternoon, none of that seemed important. He was driving alone along a quiet two-lane highway outside a small Pennsylvania town after visiting a potential development site when he noticed a silver sedan parked on the shoulder of the road. The hood was raised. A woman stood beside the vehicle, looking frustrated as she spoke into her phone. A young boy sat on a nearby guardrail swinging his legs. Cars passed without slowing down. Ryan glanced at the dashboard clock. He was already running behind schedule. Normally, he would have kept driving, but something made him ease his foot off the gas. Maybe it was the boy's patient expression. Maybe it was the exhaustion on the woman's face. Or maybe it was a feeling he couldn't explain. He pulled his black SUV onto the shoulder and stepped out. "Need a hand?" he asked. The woman turned toward him. For a second, Ryan noticed only the stress in her eyes. Then she offered a polite smile. "That's kind of you. I'm waiting for roadside assistance, but they said it could be another hour." Ryan looked at the sedan. "Mind if I take a quick look?" She hesitated before nodding. "Sure." The boy jumped off the guardrail and walked closer. "Mom says nobody knows how to fix cars anymore," he said. Ryan laughed. "Your mom might be right." "I'm Noah," the boy announced proudly. "Ryan." Noah grinned and shook his hand with surprising confidence. Ryan spent the next several minutes examining the vehicle. It didn't appear to be a major problem. After checking a few things under the hood, he found a loose battery connection. 10 minutes later, the engine started smoothly. The woman's eyes widened in relief. "You're kidding. Looks like you'll make it home after." "Oh," Ryan said. Noah threw both hands into the air. "Mom, he's a genius." The woman laughed softly, and for the first time, Ryan heard a warmth in her voice that felt strangely familiar. He looked at her again. Blonde hair pulled back into a simple ponytail. Kind eyes. A face that seemed connected to a memory just beyond reach. For a brief moment, a strange feeling settled over him, as though he had stepped into a moment he had already lived once before. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "You probably saved our day." Ryan smiled. "Happy to help." Yet as he walked back toward his SUV, he found himself looking over his shoulder one last time. The woman was helping Noah into the passenger seat, and something deep inside him refused to let the image go. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she felt familiar. But as he drove away, one question echoed quietly in his mind. Why did this stranger feel like someone he had spent a lifetime missing? For the next several days, Ryan could not explain why the woman from the roadside kept appearing in his thoughts. He met with investors in Philadelphia, reviewed development plans worth millions of dollars, and attended a charity dinner in New York, yet every so often his mind drifted back to the silver sedan, the cheerful boy named Noah, and the woman whose face seemed connected to a memory he could almost touch. By Friday afternoon, Ryan found himself back in the same small Pennsylvania town for another site visit. The meeting ended earlier than expected, leaving him with an hour before he needed to head to the airport. As he drove through downtown, he noticed a local fall festival taking place in the town square. Families walked between vendor booths. Children carried cups of hot cider. Music drifted through the crisp autumn air. Without thinking much about it, Ryan parked and decided to take a short walk. He had barely gone half a block when he heard a familiar voice. "Noah, slow down." Ryan turned instinctively. The boy from the roadside was running toward a pumpkin decorating table with the same energy he remembered. A few feet behind him was his mother. The moment Ryan saw her again, that strange sense of familiarity returned even stronger than before. He watched as she smiled at Noah, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Something about that small gesture struck him unexpectedly. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. Surprise flashed across her face. "Ryan?" she asked. "Looks like your car is still running," he replied with a smile. Thankfully, Noah immediately recognized him. "Mom, it is the car hero." Ryan laughed. "I'm not sure that title is official." "It is now," Noah declared. The three of them talked for several minutes. Ryan learned that Noah was 9 years old and loved science, baseball, and anything involving rockets. The conversation felt natural, almost effortless. Yet the longer Ryan stood there, the more unsettled he became. Every expression on the woman's face seemed connected to a forgotten chapter of his life. Finally, a volunteer approached carrying a clipboard. "Emma, we still need your signature for the school fundraiser." Ryan froze. The world around him seemed to disappear for a second. Emma. The name echoed through his mind. Emma Hayes. Suddenly, the missing pieces crashed together with startling clarity. A high school hallway. Friday night football games. A lake outside town. Countless dreams shared between two teenagers who believed life would keep them together forever. Emma. His first love. The girl who had vanished from his life 17 years ago without an explanation. Ryan stared at her, unable to hide his shock. Emma noticed the change in his expression. Her smile faded instantly. She knew. She recognized him too. Neither spoke for several seconds. Noah glanced between them, confused by the sudden silence. "Mom," he asked softly. Emma swallowed hard. "Ryan," she said quietly. Hearing his name in her voice again felt like stepping back in time. 17 years had passed, but the memory remained. The questions remained too. Why had she disappeared? Why had she never called? And why did she look just as shaken to see him as he was to see her? Ryan barely remembered how the conversation ended after that moment. Emma had signed the fundraiser paperwork. Noah had continued asking questions about rockets, and somehow the three of them exchanged a few polite words before parting ways. Yet the entire drive to the airport felt like a blur. 17 years. 17 years since Emma Hayes had disappeared from his life without warning. Back then, they had planned everything together. They had talked about college, careers, and the future as if nothing could separate them. Then one day she was simply gone. No explanation. No goodbye. No return calls. For years Ryan had carried questions he could never answer. Seeing her again should have brought closure. Instead, it had reopened every unanswered chapter. The following week, Ryan found himself looking for reasons to return to the town. Officially, he was overseeing a development project nearby. Unofficially, he could not stop thinking about Emma. On Thursday afternoon, he stopped at a small coffee shop near the town square. As he waited for his order, he glanced toward a corner table and froze. Noah sat there working on a science project. Emma sat beside him reviewing a stack of papers. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that came from a late night. The kind that came from carrying responsibilities alone for a very long time. Before Ryan could decide whether to approach them, Noah spotted him. "Mom, it is Ryan." Emma looked up. For a brief second, surprise crossed her face. Then she offered a small smile. "Looks like we keep running into each other." "It seems that way," Ryan replied. Noah immediately invited him to sit down. Within minutes, the boy was enthusiastically explaining a model rocket experiment for school. Ryan listened carefully, asking questions and encouraging him. Noah seemed to enjoy every second of the attention. Emma watched quietly from across the table. There was gratitude in her expression, but also caution. As the conversation continued, Ryan learned more about their lives. Emma worked at a local elementary school. She also tutored students after class to earn extra income. Her schedule sounded exhausting, yet she spoke about her students with genuine care. Noah occasionally interrupted with jokes that made both adults laugh. The more Ryan observed them, the more he admired what Emma had built despite obvious challenges. Then something unexpected happened. Noah pulled out his school photo album while searching for a picture of his science fair project. One photograph slipped onto the table. Ryan picked it up automatically. It showed Noah at a baseball game. The resemblance hit him instantly. The shape of the eyes, the smile, even the way the boy tilted his head looked strangely familiar. Ryan felt a sudden rush of confusion. It could not mean anything. Plenty of people shared similar features. Yet the feeling refused to leave. He handed the photograph back and forced himself to focus on the conversation. A few minutes later, Emma glanced at the clock and stood. "We should get going." Noah looked disappointed. "Can Ryan come watch my science presentation next month?" Emma hesitated. Ryan smiled before she could answer. "If I am in town, I would love to." Noah beamed. As they left the coffee shop, Ryan watched them walk away together. The questions surrounding Emma had only multiplied. But now another question had quietly entered his mind, one that he could not explain and could not ignore. Why did Noah seem so familiar? Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan and Emma crossed paths more often than either of them expected. Sometimes it happened at the coffee shop near the town square. Sometimes at school events where Noah seemed determined to pull Ryan into every conversation. Each meeting felt casual on the surface, yet beneath every smile and every polite exchange lingered years of unanswered questions. Ryan noticed that Emma rarely talked about herself. Whenever a conversation drifted toward her personal life, she gently redirected it back to Noah, her students, or whatever event was happening around them. It was as though she had built invisible walls around certain parts of her past. One Saturday morning, Ryan attended a community fundraiser where Noah was presenting his science project. The boy proudly demonstrated a small model rocket while explaining every detail with enthusiasm. Ryan listened carefully and applauded when the presentation ended. Noah's face lit up with pride. "I told you he would like it, Mom," Noah said. Emma smiled. "You did a great job." Ryan could not help noticing the exhaustion hidden behind her smile. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes. Her clothes were neat but simple. Everything about her suggested someone who spent every ounce of energy taking care of other people before herself. Later that afternoon, while Noah joined a group activity nearby, Ryan and Emma found themselves sitting on a bench overlooking a small park. For the first time since reconnecting, they were alone. A cool breeze carried fallen leaves across the grass. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "You seem tired." Emma gave a soft laugh. "That obvious? Only because I remember how stubborn you were about pretending everything was fine." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Emma looked down at her hands. "Some things never change." Ryan studied her expression. "You do not have to carry everything alone." For a moment, something vulnerable appeared in her eyes. Then it disappeared just as quickly. Life does not always give you a choice. The answer felt heavier than the words themselves. Before Ryan could respond, Noah came running toward them holding a ribbon he had won for his project. The conversation ended, yet the brief exchange stayed with Ryan long afterward. A few days later, he happened to drive past the elementary school where Emma worked. Children were leaving for the day. He spotted Emma loading boxes of classroom supplies into her car by herself. Without hesitation, he parked and walked over. "Let me help." Emma looked surprised but accepted. As they carried the supplies, Ryan noticed several overdue payment notices partially visible inside a folder near the front seat. Emma quickly moved them out of sight, but not before he understood what he had seen. Financial pressure. More than she wanted anyone to know. That evening, Ryan found himself thinking about her again. Not the girl he had loved years ago, but the woman she had become. Strong, resilient, determined, yet clearly struggling beneath burdens she refused to share. And somewhere behind those carefully guarded walls, Ryan sensed there was still a secret she had spent years protecting from the world. The secret finally began to surface on a rainy Wednesday evening. Ryan had stayed in town longer than planned after a meeting was canceled. As he drove through the quiet streets, he noticed Emma standing outside the elementary school, carrying several boxes toward her car. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a cold drizzle had already begun. Without thinking, Ryan pulled over and walked toward her. "You are going to hurt your back carrying all of that yourself," he said. Emma looked up and sighed. "You always did have a habit of appearing out of nowhere. And you always had a habit of trying to do everything alone." She tried to protest, but Ryan had already picked up 2 of the heavier boxes. Together, they loaded the supplies into her trunk. When they finished, the rain was falling harder. Neither seemed eager to leave. The school parking lot was nearly empty. Emma stared across the wet pavement for several seconds before speaking. "Ryan, there is something I need to tell you." The seriousness in her voice immediately caught his attention. "Then tell me." Emma folded her arms against the cold. "I know you have questions." Ryan let out a quiet breath. "I have had questions for 17 years. The words were calm, but the pain behind them remained. Emma lowered her eyes. "I know." Another long silence followed. Finally, she looked at him. There was sadness in her expression, but also determination. "I never wanted to leave." Ryan felt his heartbeat quicken. "What?" "I never left because I stopped loving you." For a moment, the rain, the parking lot, and the passing traffic all seemed to disappear. Ryan stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "Emma, you vanished. You stopped answering my calls. You disappeared without a word." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Because I was told that was the only choice I had." Ryan frowned. "Told by who?" Emma hesitated. The answer clearly cost her something. Then she finally said the words. "Your father." Ryan felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. My father. Emma nodded slowly. A few weeks before graduation, he asked to meet me. He told me your future would be ruined if you stayed with me. He said your family had plans for you, opportunities, expectations. He made it very clear that I did not belong in that future. Ryan could hardly believe what he was hearing. That does not make any sense. It did to him. Emma swallowed hard. He said that if I cared about you, I would step aside. He promised it would be better for you in the long run. Ryan shook his head in disbelief. And you believed him? I was 18 years old, Ryan. Her voice cracked slightly. I loved you enough to think I was helping. The truth hit him harder than he expected. For years he had believed Emma chose to walk away. For years he had carried resentment, confusion, and heartbreak. Now, in a matter of minutes, everything he believed about their past had been turned upside down. Emma looked away toward the rain-covered street. I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I had stayed. Ryan stood speechless. The answers he had wanted for 17 years had finally arrived. But instead of bringing peace, they opened an entirely new set of questions about the life they might have had if someone had never come between them. The conversation in the school parking lot stayed with Ryan for days. No matter how many meetings he attended or how many business decisions demanded his attention, he could not stop thinking about what Emma had revealed. Every memory from their past now looked different. The anger he had carried for years had nowhere to go. In its place came a growing sense of loss. They had not chosen to leave each other. Someone else had chosen for them. Yet another question kept returning to his mind, one that made even less sense the more he tried to ignore it. Noah. The boy's smile. His mannerisms. The familiar expressions Ryan noticed almost every time they spoke. He told himself it was coincidence. Nothing more. Still, the feeling refused to disappear. 2 weeks later, the town held a regional science exhibition where students from several schools presented projects. Noah had qualified to participate, and Ryan had kept his promise to attend. The event filled the local community center with families, teachers, and students proudly displaying their work. Noah immediately spotted Ryan when he arrived. You came, he shouted, running over. Of course I did, Ryan replied. I would not miss this. Noah spent nearly 20 minutes explaining every detail of his project. Ryan listened carefully, asking questions and encouraging him. Emma watched from nearby, smiling at the interaction. For a moment, everything felt surprisingly natural. Then an unexpected problem interrupted the afternoon. One of the event coordinators approached Emma looking concerned. We need Noah's emergency medical information, she said. There was an issue with one of the registration forms. We are missing part of the file. Emma's expression changed immediately. I thought I submitted everything. Most of it is here, the coordinator replied. But some documents are incomplete. Emma followed the coordinator to a registration table. Ryan remained with Noah, who seemed completely unconcerned. Several minutes later, Emma returned carrying a folder. As she sorted through papers, one document slipped from her hands and landed near Ryan's chair. Instinctively, he bent down to pick it up. The page was only visible for a second before Emma reached for it. But that second was enough. Ryan's eyes caught a date. Noah's birth date. His mind instantly performed the calculation. 9 years old. The timing lined up with a period shortly after Emma had disappeared from his life. His pulse quickened. Emma noticed the change in his expression. She froze. Neither spoke. Around them, families continued chatting and students presented projects, completely unaware of the tension that had suddenly appeared. Ryan looked from the document to Emma, then back to Noah, who was enthusiastically describing rockets to another student. A realization began forming, one so enormous that he could barely process it. Emma's eyes filled with emotion. She knew exactly what he was thinking. Ryan, she said quietly. But he could not look away from Noah. Every familiar gesture suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. Every resemblance took on new meaning. And for the first time, Ryan found himself asking a question that changed everything. Was it possible that the child he had grown so unexpectedly attached to was not just familiar because of coincidence, but because Noah was his son? Ryan waited until the science exhibition ended before asking Emma to speak with him privately. They stood outside the community center beneath a row of maple trees glowing with autumn colors. Noah was inside helping teachers pack up displays, giving them a few moments alone. Neither spoke at first. Emma looked nervous. Ryan looked as though he was carrying the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. Finally, he broke the silence. Tell me the truth. Emma closed her eyes briefly. She had known this moment would come. Ryan, is Noah my son? The question hung between them. There was no anger in his voice. Only disbelief and hope mixed together. Emma looked down at the ground. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she nodded. Ryan felt the world stop. Every suspicion, every resemblance, every strange feeling he had experienced since meeting Noah suddenly made sense. He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process what he had just heard. He is mine. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Ryan looked away toward the parking lot. 9 years. 9 years of birthdays, school projects, holidays, and milestones. 9 years he had never known existed. Yet even through the shock, another realization emerged. Emma had carried that responsibility alone for nearly a decade. Why did you never tell me? He asked quietly. Emma swallowed hard. After I left, I found out I was pregnant. Ryan stared at her. And you never thought I deserved to know? I wanted to tell you. Her voice trembled. More than once. She took a deep breath. But your father contacted me again. He made it clear that your life was moving in a different direction. You were attending one of the best business schools in the country. Opportunities were opening for you. I convinced myself that telling you would only complicate everything. Ryan shook his head slowly. That should have been my choice. I know. The pain in her voice was genuine. I know that now. Before either could say more, a familiar voice interrupted. Mom. Noah stepped outside carrying his project board. He immediately sensed the emotion on both faces. Is everything okay? Emma forced a smile. Everything is fine. Ryan looked at the boy standing before him. For the first time, he was not looking at a familiar child. He was looking at his son. The realization nearly overwhelmed him. Yet he knew this was not about him. Noah deserved stability, not confusion. Ryan smiled gently. Your project was the best one there. Noah grinned. I got second place. Then the judges were wrong. Noah laughed. The sound warmed something inside Ryan that he had not known was missing. But just as hope began to take shape, a black luxury sedan pulled into the parking lot. Ryan immediately recognized the vehicle. His expression hardened. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. A tall older man emerged. Expensive suit, silver hair, commanding presence. Emma's face immediately lost color. Ryan felt a knot form in his stomach. Standing only yards away was the man responsible for separating them 17 years earlier. His father had arrived, and judging by the look in his eyes, he had not come to celebrate a reunion. The parking lot seemed to grow quieter as Charles Walker approached. Even after 17 years, Emma recognized the same confidence that had intimidated her when she was barely 18 years old. Ryan stepped forward immediately, placing himself between his father and the small family standing nearby. What are you doing here? He asked. Charles adjusted his coat. I could ask you the same question. Your assistant informed me that you have been spending an unusual amount of time in this town. Ryan laughed bitterly. So you had someone watching me? I had someone looking out for your interests. Charles glanced toward Emma. It appears I was correct to be concerned. Noah looked between the adults, clearly sensing tension he did not understand. Emma gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Ryan's voice hardened. You do not get to do this again. Charles met his son's gaze. Again, do not pretend you do not know what I mean. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Charles's face. Ryan took a step closer. Emma told me everything. You convinced her to leave. You made decisions that were never yours to make. Charles remained silent for several seconds. Then he sighed. I did what I believed was necessary. Emma closed her eyes. Hearing those words again after all these years hurt more than she expected. Ryan stared at his father in disbelief. Necessary? You had opportunities in front of you. I wanted to protect your future. By destroying someone else's? Ryan replied. Charles looked toward Emma. The choices were difficult for everyone. You do not get to call them difficult, Ryan said. You walked away. We had to live with them. The older man seemed ready to argue, but his attention shifted to Noah. His expression changed slightly. And who is this? Ryan did not hesitate. Your grandson. The words landed with unexpected force. Charles looked stunned. Emma instinctively pulled Noah closer. The boy simply stared at the stranger, confused by everything unfolding around him. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Finally, Charles looked back at Ryan. You are certain? I am. Charles slowly exhaled. This complicates things. Ryan shook his head. No, it simplifies them. Ryan, no, Ryan's voice remained calm but firm. For 17 years I believed Emma abandoned me. For 9 years I did not know I had a son. Every one of those years traces back to a decision you made. Charles studied his son carefully. You are willing to throw away everything you have built because of this. Ryan looked at Emma, then at Noah. The answer came without hesitation. This is not throwing something away. This is finally finding what was missing. Charles's expression darkened. If you continue down this path, there may be consequences. Investors value stability. Board members expect certain standards. Family assets come with expectations. Ryan understood exactly what his father was implying. The company, the inheritance, the future that had been mapped out for him since childhood. Yet for the first time in his life, none of it seemed as important as the two people standing beside him. Ryan placed a reassuring hand on Noah's shoulder. Then they can keep every expectation. Charles stared at him. You would walk away from your inheritance? Ryan never looked. Away from Emma and Noah. If that is the price of having my family, then yes. 3 months later, the first snow of winter covered the town in a quiet layer of white. Life had changed in ways none of them could have imagined. Ryan had kept his word. He had stepped away from several family-controlled business arrangements and reorganized his future on his own terms. The decision shocked many people in his professional circle, but for the first time in years, he felt certain about where he belonged. He spent more time in the small Pennsylvania town than he did in corporate boardrooms. He attended Noah's school events, helped with science projects, and learned the routines that most fathers take for granted. Every moment felt precious because he knew how many years he had missed. Noah adjusted faster than anyone expected. At first, he had been cautious, unsure what it meant to suddenly have a father in his life. But Ryan never tried to force a relationship. He simply showed up. He was there for school presentations, weekend baseball practices, and ordinary evenings spent helping with homework at the kitchen table. Slowly, trust grew. One evening, while they were building a model rocket together in Emma's living room, Noah looked up and asked a question Ryan would never forget. Are you staying? Ryan set down the instruction booklet and smiled gently. If you will have me, I am not going anywhere. Noah nodded as if that answer settled something important inside him. Then he returned to assembling the rocket. Ryan had to look away for a moment to hide the emotion in his eyes. Emma noticed. She understood exactly what that moment meant. Their relationship had also changed. The years of pain and misunderstanding could not disappear overnight, but honesty had replaced uncertainty. They talked about the past openly now. They talked about the future too. One snowy Saturday afternoon, Ryan invited Emma and Noah to walk with him through the town square where they had first reconnected. Holiday lights decorated the trees, and families moved between small shops carrying cups of hot chocolate. When they reached the center of the square, Ryan stopped. Emma immediately sensed something unusual. Ryan turned toward her. For 17 years, I believed I lost the most important person in my life. Emma's eyes filled with emotion. Ryan continued. Then I found out I had actually lost too. Noah looked up curiously. Ryan smiled and rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. I cannot get back the years we missed, but I can choose what happens next. He reached into his coat pocket and removed a small ring box. Emma covered her mouth in surprise. Ryan, I do not want another day of my life without you in it. He looked at Noah. Either of you. Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks as Ryan opened the box. Will you marry me? For a moment, she could not speak. Then she laughed through her tears and nodded. Yes. Noah threw his arms around both of them before Ryan could even stand. Nearby families applauded, but Ryan barely noticed. The only people that mattered were the two standing beside him. Months later, as spring arrived, they gathered in a small ceremony surrounded by friends, students from Emma's school, and neighbors who had become extended family. There were no grand headlines, no corporate announcements, and no displays of wealth. Just love, forgiveness, and a second chance that almost never happened. That evening, after the celebration ended, Ryan helped Noah hang a family photograph in their home. The picture showed all three of them smiling together. Noah stepped back to admire it. Then he looked at Ryan and said the words Ryan had dreamed of hearing ever since learning the truth. Good night, Dad. Ryan smiled. Good night, son. And in that simple moment, he realized that success was never measured by the fortune he had built. It was measured by the family he had finally found.